House of the Dragon is finally back, and the first episode of Season 2 was just as heartbreaking as we all expected. But let's start with the opener, the North. We've jumped forward in time maybe about 10 days, which is a short amount of time for Jace's hair to be that grown out, but maybe they had the dating wrong in all the interviews where they were talking about it. But Rhaenyra's heir has treated Lady Arryn in the Vale and gotten her support in return for a dragon guarding the Eyrie, so one of Laena's girls can head there for defense instead of just safekeeping. I'm guessing he also hit the three sisters in White Harbor before getting to Winterfell. They just didn't think we needed to see all that. Kind of disappointing because I really did want to see the Eyrie, but oh well. In the North, we have a long monologue by Cregan Stark, a young man so wise and strong he's called the Old Wolf, about the Night's Watch and why it's so important, including seeing how they pick every 1 in 10 people to join. And I love that he says that it's an honor and people are happy to do this, yet that guy looks pretty disappointed when he gets the Black Rock. Starks sometimes believe everyone thinks like them when it comes to honor, and that their absolute duty is always something everyone will do wholeheartedly. I really love the lore dump of Alysanne coming to the Wall and trying to get her dragon Silverwing to go past it. Here's an excerpt from Fire and Blood Volume 1 about that. The men of the Night's Watch were as thunderstruck by the Queen's dragon as the people of White Harbor had been, though the Queen herself noted that Silverwing does not like this wall. Though it was summer and the wall was weeping, the chill of the ice could still be felt whenever the wind blew, and every gust would make the dragon hiss and snap. Thrice I flew Silverwing high above Castle Black, and thrice I tried to take her north beyond the wall, Alysanne wrote to 𝑗aehaerys, but every time she veered back south again and refused to go. Never before has she refused to take me where I wished to go. I laughed about it when I came down again, so that the Black brothers would not realize anything was amiss, but it troubled me then, and it troubles me still. So yeah, even the dragons know, the wall, going beyond the wall, that's not something you want to mess with. There is something beyond there that they don't want to get near, and Cregan is smart enough to know that a huge-ass wall of this size isn't to keep out some thugs. There's a greater evil they need to keep at bay. Now, why is that seen as nonsense in modern Game of Thrones time? Well, it probably turned into a myth, or maybe people forgot about Alysanne being unable to bring her dragon beyond the wall. When the rest of the dragons die, there's no future dragon trips to the wall to remind the men of the Night's Watch, oh hey, there's something so terrifying beyond here, even dragons don't want to mess around with it. Also, if you want to explain why they forgot all about it, Cregan's line does get kind of messy. There's a lot of deaths and switcheroos in that chaos. I can see a lot of information lost. And Lord Stark's taking their duty to guard the wall too seriously is a narrative that becomes stronger as the years go on. So there could be a lot of reasons why by the time we get to Ned Stark, he kind of huffs about a greater evil beyond the wall. Now, I wish they would have mentioned the reason Cregan gives Jace such a hard look after reading the message that Luke is dead is because Cregan lost a brother, and that's what helps the two boys bond and become really good friends. Cregan's a few years older than Jace. I'm sad we didn't get to see Sarah Snow and her plotline. She's a illegitimate sister of Cregan. I guess Jace banging a northern girl and possibly marrying her is a lot to add on when the show is only 8 episodes, and people also might try to think, oh, they're just copying off Robb Stark and his dumb ass marrying a woman he bangs even though he's supposed to marry someone else. Also, why did they not mention the Pact of Ice and Fire they signed? That's kind of a big deal. Maybe we'll get it in a flashback? Cregan sending Greybeards down is also significant. Every winter, older men would go off to hunt for food, in quotations, but it's really to go off and die, leaving more supplies for the younger generation. So the men he's sending likely would have died in the coming winter anyways. All in all, I'm happy with the little bit we saw of the North and that we got to at least meet Cregan Stark. There were also a lot of little details they paid attention to that just were so great, such as the wall being in better repair. Because we know as the generations went on, the wall wasn't as well maintained. I also like the hint of they started selecting the 1 out of every 10 men after Torrhen, the king that knelt. So Aegon likely told him, maybe not exactly his dragon dream, but said, hey, there's a greater threat beyond the wall, and all the Stark lords, they need to keep this heavily manned. Or, maybe Aegon tried to tell him about the dragon dreams, and Torrhen was like, boy, we already know all this. Now, they did mess up some generational relations between the Starks, but they crunched the timeline down considerably, so I think they just kept doing that. I'm not too bothered by it. Heading back to Dragonstone, it makes sense Rhaenyra is grieving the death of her second-born child, 𝒌𝐴𝐴𝑟ys, and needs proof that he is gone, so she takes her dragon Syrax to Storm's End to try to find his body. The bits of his dragon Arrax she finds is devastating, also his empty clothing. It's also devastating seeing her dragon responding to her all-consuming grief. It isn't 100% confirmed via lore, but it's believed that Arrax was an egg laid by Syrax, so if that does turn out to be true, then Syrax is also grieving the loss of a child in this scene. So it's a double heartbreak. Now, this narrative that the reason Rhaenyra wasn't active herself in the war was due to her despair over losing her child makes a lot of sense, and it makes her not joining in the war, unlike her half-brother, the usurper Aegon, seem less bad as it's put in lore. However, you gotta imagine as she loses more people on her side due to inaction, it's going to make those loyal to her mad. It's also incredibly chilling to me that Rhaenyra's only words this episode were, "I want Aemon Targaryen." The funeral for Luke was devastating to see, and I think Henry and Emma did a wonderful job capturing the loss of losing someone so close to you so suddenly that was also just so young. It was so heartbreaking hearing Jace try to tell his mother about his successful treating with other lords and ladies and him breaking down while doing it. They nailed that scene. Moving on a little bit, it looks like they're changing the storyline of Adam and Alan of Hall a bit. I'm interested to see how much Corlys knows of them. I did do a lore video on both of them, so if you want to check that out, I will try to list it, but if not, it's pretty easy to find. The White Worm's accent is so much better. I also love her character infinitely more this season. She seems much more believable and less self-righteous, which is how she's supposed to come across. I think they took all the criticism of the White Worm from season 1 and just erased every bad thing about her character. At least so far. I know it's too early to tell, but so far I'm very impressed with the changes they made. How much do you think the women in Daemon's life keeping him from going fully balls to the walls is just absolutely killing him? I love that conversation between him and Rhaenys, because Rhaenys' daughter, Laena, wanted to go back home. She wanted to give birth at home, and Daemon wouldn't let her, so there's probably a lot of animosity there, and also that Daemon didn't come to Rhaenys himself and say, hey, your child's dead. And speaking of Daemon, Blood and Cheese was done differently than lore, and I don't think it's entirely bad. I loved Blood, my god, when he said F the High Towers, I was in heaven. I love that man. Also, his voice is amazing. Oh my gosh. Cheese was what I expected, and he followed his character lore pretty well. I think the most disappointing thing about Blood and Cheese was Helaena. In lore, it was said she offered her own life for her children to be spared. In the show, she just offered a necklace. I understand why the Maesters would write in their lore books she offered up her life when she didn't actually. They worked hard to make Aegon and his usurping, horrible, trash family look better than what they were. As well, maybe Helaena does lie. Maybe she says to Alicent, I offered up my life, but still, they killed Jaehaerys. I'm still a little salty we don't have their youngest Maelor. In lore, Blood and Cheese allow her to pick who dies, and she picks Maelor because he's the youngest, and she believes that he won't understand what's going on. Also, of course, she doesn't want to lose Aegon's heir Jaehaerys. Well, they then tell Maelor, you hear that, little boy? Your mama wants you dead, and they kill Jaehaerys anyways. Knowing she named her youngest to die, and that he knows it too, causes Helaena to just spiral after this. She can't even look at her child because of the choice she made. And if you're interested, here is actually the passage from Fire and Blood Volume 1 about that. They bound and gagged the Dowager Queen, whilst Blood strangled her bedmaid. Then they settled down to wait, for they knew it was custom of Queen Helaena to bring her children to see their grandmother every evening before bed. Blind to her danger, the queen appeared as dusk was settling over the castle, accompanied by her 3 children. Jaehaerys and Jaehaera were 6, Maelor 2. As they entered the apartments, Helaena was holding his little hand and calling out her mother's name. Blood barred the door and slew the queen's guardsmen, whilst Cheese appeared to snatch up Maelor. Scream and you all die, Blood told her grace. Queen Helaena kept her calm, it is said. Who are you, she demanded of the 2. Debt collectors, said Cheese. An eye for an eye, a son for a son. We only want the one to square things. Won't hurt the rest of you fine folks. Not one little hair. Which one of you want to lose your grace? Once she realized what he meant, Queen Helaena pleaded with the men to kill her instead. A wife's not a son, said Blood. It has to be a boy. Cheese warned the queen to make a choice soon, before Blood grew bored and her little girl. Pick, he said, or we kill them all. On her knees weeping, Helaena named her youngest Maelor. Perhaps she thought the boy was too young to understand, or perhaps it was because the older boy Jaehaerys was King Aegon's firstborn son and heir, next in line to the Iron Throne. You hear that, little boy? Cheese whispered to Maelor. Your mummy wants you dead. Then he gave Blood a grin, and the hulking swordsman slew Prince Jaehaerys, striking off the boy's head with a single blow. The queen began to scream. So yeah, quite a bit different in book lore. Also, there's actually guards, guarding the queen. Are you kidding me? What was going on? I mean, we know that Kristen was banging the Dowager Queen, but still, there should have been more guards than that, especially when they were walking through the throne room past it. No one stopped them and was like, hey, we just gotta check your credentials real quick. I'm kind of wondering if the reason why she picked Jdâhrî's to die right away instead of Jdâhrî is because of her visions. Ryan Condal, showrunner for House of the Dragon, shared a bit on Helaena's prophetic abilities, saying, Helaena is not magical, but she's tuned into a frequency that other characters are not, as we set up in Season 1. We're playing with this idea of their various talks. As Viserys talked about, there are dragon dreamers in every generation of the Targaryens, and Helaena, because she's seen in this world as odd, a lot of people don't necessarily pay attention to the things that she says. But I also think she doesn't have a clear interpretation of them. It's not like she's seen these things and knows exactly what they are. A lot of times she doesn't realize what it was until the event happens. I think that's part of the burden of this gift, if you can even call it that, and what she's burdened with. So I think she just perceives the world differently. What you're seeing in that sequence is a very human response. It is shock, and she goes from a panic of thinking she's going to be chased out, and then she gets to the bottom of the stairs and she's wondering, okay, where do I go? Where do I go now? She's running for her life and trying to figure out where to go next. So yeah, I'm kind of wondering, Ryan Condal saying that, does she just get flashes in her mind, with the beast beneath the board, and then when the dragon popped out at Aegon's coronation, she finally understood what her dreams/visions meant? Seems a bit odd. It's not like she's interpreting tarot cards, but I don't think they're ever going to fully explain it. Now, Ryan Condal, the showrunner, further touched on why they cut out Maelor and why they changed things further, sharing this. It was less about trying to top the book. It was more about the practicality of where we were. The period of history Season 1 covered, it was still a compressed time period. The book covered 30 plus years, and we crunched it down to 20. One of the side effects is you have Rhaenyra and Daemon's children are much younger than they were in the book, as are Helaena and Aegon's children. They haven't been together long enough to have 2 generations of kids, so Maelor does not exist yet, and we only have the twins. So working from that place, we just wanted to try to make Blood and Cheese a visceral television sequence. We decided to tell it from their point of view and make it like a heist gone wrong, whereas in the book it's depicted purely from Helaena and Alicent's perspective. Blood and Cheese come upon Helaena, and she's sort of the third act of their story. The idea was to build suspense and dread as they're looking for Aemond, whom Daemon names as the target. And then you put 2 criminals into a situation with gold in front of their faces, and things can go wrong. The time crunching still bothers me a bit, but I understand why they had to do it. I did like the perspective of Blood and Cheese, though imagine how creepy it would be if we just followed Helaena putting her kids to bed, and then all of a sudden the 2 men popped up out of nowhere after meeting with Daemon. That would have been very terrifying. Finally, as to why Blood and Cheese took out Helena's son when they were supposed to take out Aemond, Ryan Condal stated it was likely implied by Daemon that if they couldn't find Aemond, they shouldn't leave empty-handed. This is what he shared on that. We intentionally cut away from that moment because I love Matt Smith, and the look that he gives them just haunts me. He certainly gave them some kind of instruction, and to some degree, we hear them arguing about it in the room, that he said we need to bring ahead, a son for a son. You can imagine Daemon maybe said to them, don't leave empty-handed, but we left it open to interpretation. So yeah, given all that, I think it's likely Daemon let them leave it to their imaginations, but said, hey, if you don't bring a son's head back and give it to me, you're not going to get paid the other half. Alright, which leads us to the realm's biggest hypocrites, Alicent and Cole. What the actual hell? Mr. and Mrs. Moral Responsibility and Duty and Decency will prevail, doing one of the most shameful things possible. The Lord Commander is screwing the Dowager Queen. What a mess. I think this definitely takes away Kristen's whole I'm against Rhaenyra because she has 0 morals and ethics and makes it that he just hates that he got pumped and dumped by her. I just don't see super religious Alicent with the uptight Paladin Cole doing this, but here we are, and it sucks. Man, is Kristen going to lose it when he finds out Alicent does OnlyFans with her feet for information? Guy does not like other people on his pieces. Now, the actors did touch on this scene with Olivia Cooke sharing. I think initially for Alicent, she's never allowed herself to act on the feelings that she has. She was in a pretty passionless marriage. Now her body is doing things that she didn't think it was capable of. However, Olivia Cooke also shared that what Cole and her are doing does bring Alicent a great amount of shame, and Fabian Frankel, the actor for Kristen Cole, said that they are both incredibly repressed and sex between them is more of a relief for the both of them. So they're doing it for worse reasons than what Rhaenyra did with sleeping with Harwin. Got it. Hypocrites. I completely love that Otto and Alicent have gotten what's coming to them with Aegon being uncontrollable. You put a drunk psycho with daddy issues on the throne with unlimited power. What'd you think was gonna happen? The guy R-words people and loves to watch his own abandoned illegitimate children compete in orphan fights. There was no way they thought this guy was gonna be amazing on the throne. I guess leave it to Otto's arrogance to think he could control his grandson like he controlled his daughter. Now, I did not see the direction they went with Aegon, and honestly, I love it. They could have made him a Joffrey prototype, but instead gave him way more depth. Yeah, he's still an R-wording alcoholic monster that gets off on watching children fight to the death and child rings, but he also has good intentions when he first sits the throne. Again, at first. He wants his subjects, even stolen subjects, to be happy and prosper. He wants to listen to them and solve their problems. Aegon his entire life was never given a purpose and never instructed by his father how to rule, which does make sense because Rhaenyra was his heir and Viserys started to get very ill as Aegon got older. However, it doesn't change that Viserys neglected his son and didn't spend any time with him, which we see with Aegon being given a purpose. He's trying to be good at first, and also not wanting to be like his father. Aegon wants his son Jaehaerys with him and to teach him how to rule, to be the type of father Aegon wishes Viserys was for him. It is actually incredibly heart-wrenching to see this man believe his father actually wanted him to rule, that his father in the end did believe in him, and to see how he's trying so hard to be a good father and ruler now. And then it all comes crashing down with Blood and Cheese, an event that will push the old Aegon right back to the surface, one that just will go to insanely dark depths to get what he deserves and wants. Because inside, he is a POS. Even though he did try for a brief moment to be a good ruler and father, this event is just going to plunge him back into who he really is. Lastly, I just want to say the intro was amazing. The tapestry from showing the freehold of Valyria, the taming of dragons, the Targaryens fleeing, Targaryen kings up to Viserys, then Rhaenyra and Aegon being crowned. All of that just amazing. Absolutely loved it. So overall, I think this was a really good episode. Yeah, they made some lore errors. Yeah, they made some stupid decisions. I think Helaena should have offered up her own life. Kristen and Alicent together is just so beyond weird, but there were so many amazing Easter eggs. So I feel like this episode overall, probably an 8 out of 10 for me, but like, subscribe, let me know what you thought about the episode in the comment section down below.